The child's body hit the snow 3 feet from his gate. Silas McAllister hadn't run in 6 years, not since the night he buried his wife and son in the same grave. But he ran now. His boots broke through the ice crust. His knees hit the frozen ground. And when he turned her over, when he saw the bruises on her throat and the fever burning in her eyes, something inside him cracked open that he'd spent 6 years trying to keep shut. If you want to know what happened next, subscribe to our channel and stay until the end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We'd love to see how far this story travels. December 1883. Wyoming Territory. The kind of cold that killed cattle standing up. Silas McAllister rode through it anyway. His coat was crusted white. His beard had ice in it. The town council's words still rang in his ears from the meeting he'd just left. Unnatural living alone like that. A man his age. All that money and no family. Something wrong with him. Let them talk. He'd stopped caring what Bitter Creek thought of him 3 Christmases ago when he'd stood at 2 graves and promised God he'd never love anything again. The ranch gate appeared through the white curtain of snow. Rimrock Ranch, 2,000 acres, 400 head of cattle, and not a single soul waiting inside except Consuelo, his housekeeper, who knew better than to ask questions. He was reaching for the iron latch when he saw the shape in the snow. Small, dark against white. Not moving. Silas's heart stopped. Then it slammed against his ribs so hard he could taste copper. He ran. His boots punched through the ice crust. His knees hit the frozen ground beside the body. A child. A girl? 8, maybe 9 years old. Threadbare coat. No gloves. Lips blue. He turned her over. Bruises. Purple and yellow. Around her throat. On her cheekbone. A burn mark on her wrist, round and deliberate. Her eyes opened. Pale blue-gray. Fever bright. She looked at him like she was seeing a ghost. "Please." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sick. I can't walk. Can I stay one night?" Silas's hands were shaking. Not from the cold. "Who did this to you?" But she was already gone, slipping back into unconsciousness. Her hand clutched a torn scrap of paper. He pried it loose. Surveyor's marks. Property lines. Numbers that didn't make sense in the dying light. He gathered her up, light as kindling, burning with fever despite the cold. The walk to the house took 30 seconds. It felt like 30 years. Consuelo. The front door burst open. His housekeeper stood in the doorway, wiping flour from her hands. She saw the child and crossed herself. "Dios mío. That's the Whitmore girl." Silas pushed past her into the warmth. "You know her. Everyone knows her." Consuelo was already moving, pulling blankets from the chest by the fire. "Orphaned last spring. Lives with her uncle now, the banker." Silas laid the child on the settee by the hearth. His hands worked without thinking. Coat stripped off, wet dress, peeled away, wool blankets wrapped tight. 3 years since his wife died, and his body still remembered. How to care for someone fading. How to fight death with warmth and will and desperate prayer. Get water, hot, and whatever medicine we have. Consuelo ran. Silas knelt beside the settee, his hand on the child's forehead. Too hot. The fever was eating her alive. He looked at the bruises on her throat. The burn on her wrist. The banker. Cornelius Whitmore. Silas had seen him at the meeting tonight. Gold watch chain, pressed suit, smile that never reached his eyes. The kind of man who talked about Christian charity while counting other people's money. The child stirred. Her eyes opened again, finding his face. "You look like someone," she whispered. "Can't remember who." "Don't try to talk. Save your strength." "Are you going to send me back?" The question hit him like a fist. Her voice was flat, resigned, like she'd already accepted the answer. "No." "Promise?" Silas looked at her. 8 years old, beaten, burned, Dying of fever in a blizzard because whatever waited for her at home was worse than freezing to death. I promise. She nodded once. Then her eyes closed and she started to hum. Barely audible. A tune that made Silas's spine go cold. His mother's lullaby. The one she'd sung to him and his brother 40 years ago, before everything went wrong. The fever broke at 3 a.m. Silas hadn't moved from the chair beside the settee. Consuelo had tried to send him to bed twice. He'd refused twice. The third time, she'd just brought him coffee and stopped asking. The child's breathing had evened out around midnight. Her color had returned pink instead of gray. The thermometer read 101 instead of 104. She was going to live. Silas sat in the dark listening to her breathe and tried to remember the last time he'd wanted something to live this badly. At dawn, she woke up. He heard her stirring before he saw her move. The rustle of blankets. A small intake of breath. Then silence, the wary silence of a creature assessing danger. Morning. He kept his voice low, gentle. She sat up slowly, eyes scanning the room, taking inventory, the fire, the door, the windows, the man sitting 3 feet away. Where am I? Rimrock Ranch, about 2 miles east of town. How long? Just the night. You collapsed at my gate. Her hands went to her throat, touching the bruises there. Her face didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Shame, maybe. Or fear. I should go. You should eat. Consuelo appeared in the doorway carrying a tray. Oatmeal, toast, tea with honey. She set it on the table beside the settee. Eat slow, mija. Your stomach won't like it if you rush. The child looked at the food like she'd never seen so much in one place. Her hand reached out, hesitated, pulled back. It's yours, Silas said. No one's going to take it. She ate. Slow at first, then faster. The spoon scraped the bowl's bottom. Ceramic on ceramic. A small domestic sound that filled the quiet. When she finished, she looked at him again, studying his face. You're Mr. McAllister. That's right. The rich one. Everyone talks about you. I imagine they do. They say you're strange. That you don't talk to nobody. That your wife died and you went crazy. Consuelo made a sharp sound of disapproval. Silas held up a hand. They say all that, do they? The child nodded. But they're wrong. How do you figure crazy people don't make promises? She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. And you promised you wouldn't send me back. Silas leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What's your name? Emma Grace Whitmore. But my papa called me Emmy. Your papa, not your uncle. Her face went still. That flat, careful stillness of a child who'd learned that showing fear made things worse. My papa's dead. I'm sorry. Are you? She tilted her head, studying him. People always say that. They don't mean it. I mean it. How do I know? Silas was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph. Worn at the edges, creased from years of carrying. That's my wife, Sarah, and my son Thomas. He was 5 when this was taken. He turned the photograph so Emmy could see. They died 3 years ago. Christmas Eve. Fever took them both in the same night. Emmy looked at the photograph, then at him. You keep it in your pocket. Every day. That's how I know you mean it. She handed the photograph back carefully like it might break. About being sorry. You know what it feels like. The fire crackled. Outside the wind had stopped. The blizzard was over. Emmy. Silas's voice was rough. Who hurt you? She didn't answer. The bruises on your throat. The burn on your wrist. Someone did that to you. Still nothing. Her eyes had gone somewhere far away. I can't help you if I don't know. You can't help me anyway. Her voice was small, matter of fact. He's got the papers. He's got the law. He's got everything. Who? The front door crashed open. Silas was on his feet before the echo died, his hand going to his hip where his gun should have been. But he'd taken it off when he came inside. It was hanging on the hook by the door, right next to Sheriff Tom Coulter. "Morning, Silas." The sheriff stepped inside, badge catching the firelight. His face was apologetic but firm. "Got a warrant." Behind him, 3 men, deputies, and behind them Cornelius Whitmore. Gold watch chain, pressed suit, smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Gentlemen." Cornelius's voice was smooth, practiced. "I believe you've found my niece." Emmy made a sound, small, terrified. She pressed herself back against the settee cushions like she was trying to disappear into them. Silas stepped between her and the door. "She's not going anywhere." "I'm afraid that's not your decision." Cornelius pulled a paper from his coat. "Guardianship order, signed by Judge Harrison. This child is my legal ward, and you're holding her unlawfully." "Unlawfully?" Silas's voice was deadly quiet. "She was dying in a blizzard. You want me to explain that to a judge? I want you to comply with the law." Cornelius's smile widened. "Unless you'd like to add kidnapping to your reputation." Sheriff Coulter stepped forward. "Silas, I don't like this any more than you do. But the papers are legal. I've seen them myself. Those bruises legal too." Silas pointed at Emmy without taking his eyes off Cornelius. "The burn on her wrist. That in the paperwork." The sheriff glanced at Emmy. His jaw tightened, but he didn't move. "Children fall," Cornelius said smoothly. "They burn themselves on stoves. They bruise easily. It's tragic, but hardly criminal. She didn't fall. And you know this how you've known the child for," Cornelius checked his pocket watch, "12 hours. I've been her guardian for 8 months. I think I know my own niece better than a recluse who talks to cattle more than people." Silas took a step forward. The deputies' hands went to their guns. "Easy." Sheriff Coulter raised a hand. "Everyone just easy. I'm taking my niece home." Cornelius walked toward the settee. "Emma, come." Emmy didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on Silas, pleading. "You promised." Cornelius's hand closed around her arm. She flinched but didn't cry out, didn't fight, just went limp and let herself be pulled to her feet. "Thank you for your hospitality, Mr. McAllister." Cornelius's voice dripped with false gratitude. "The community appreciates your Christian charity. But family takes care of family." He dragged Emmy toward the door. She looked back once. Her face was blank, accepting. The face of a child who'd learned that hope was just another word for disappointment. Then they were gone. The door closed behind them. Hooves on frozen ground, fading into silence. Silas stood in his empty house, hands shaking, heart pounding, staring at the blankets Emmy had left behind. Consuelo appeared beside him. Her voice was quiet. "What are you going to do?" Silas picked up the blankets, folded them slowly, set them on the settee. "I made her a promise. The law's wrong. That doesn't matter to judges. Then I'll find something that does." He walked to the hook by the door, strapped on his gun belt, put on his coat. "Where are you going?" "Town. I need to talk to someone." "Who?" Silas opened the door. The cold hit him like a wall, but he barely felt it. "Anyone who knows what Cornelius Whitmore is really doing with that child." The saloon was half empty at 9 in the morning. A few cowboys nursing hangovers. Old Pete behind the bar wiping glasses that were already clean. Silas walked in, and the room went quiet. He was used to that. 3 years of silence had made him a stranger in the town where he'd lived for 20. He walked to the bar. "Whiskey." Old Pete poured. "Heard you had company last night." "Word travels fast." "This is Bitter Creek. Word travels faster than the wind." Pete slid the glass across the bar. Also heard Cornelius came and got her this morning. With the sheriff. Silas drank. The whiskey burned going down. What do you know about him? Cornelius. Pete shrugged. What everyone knows. Moved here 2 years ago. Bought the bank. Married well. Widowed quick. Inherited his brother's land when the accident happened. Accident. Wagon crash. Up on Miller's Ridge. Brakes failed coming down the grade. Thomas Whitmore and his wife both killed. Only the girl survived. Silas set down his glass. Thomas Whitmore. That was her father. Good man Thomas. Quiet. Kept to himself. Had a small spread east of town. Nothing special, but he worked it honest. Pete leaned closer. Word is Cornelius wanted that land. Made Thomas an offer 6 months before the accident. Thomas said no. And then the brakes failed. Worn cable, they said. Mountain roads are dangerous. Or someone cut it. Pete's face went carefully blank. That's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation, it's a question. Questions like that can get a man killed in this town. Pete picked up another glass, started polishing it. Cornelius holds paper on half the businesses here, mine included. A man says the wrong thing, suddenly his loan gets called. His credit dries up. His friends stop being friendly. So everyone just looks the other way. Everyone survives. Pete met his eyes. Like you've been surviving. 3 years in that big house talking to nobody. We all got our ways of getting through. Silas put money on the bar. More than the whiskey cost. The girl, Emmy. You ever see her in town? Sometimes. Cornelius brings her to church, dresses her up nice, sits her in the front pew like a prize. Pete's voice dropped. But I've seen her at the general store too, when he's not watching, buying thread to mend her own clothes, flinching when someone raises their voice. Anyone else notice? Pearl Chin, the seamstress. She mentioned something once. Said the girl had marks on her arms. Said she knew what marks like that meant. Silas pushed back from the bar. Where's Pearl's shop? End of Main Street, red door. But Silas. Pete caught his arm. Be careful. Cornelius has friends, and they're not the forgiving kind. Pearl Chin's shop smelled of fabric and lavender. Bolts of cloth lined the walls. A sewing machine sat by the window catching the pale winter light. Pearl herself was small. Chinese. Maybe 35. She looked up when Silas walked in, and something in her face shifted from caution to recognition. Mr. McAllister, I wondered when you'd come. You know who I am. Everyone knows who you are. She set down the dress she'd been mending. I also know you had the Whitmore girl last night, and I know Cornelius took her back this morning. Silas closed the door behind him. You mentioned marks, on her arms, to Pete at the saloon. Pete talks too much. But Pearl didn't deny it. Sit down, Mr. McAllister. I'll make tea. I don't need tea. Yes, you do. Because what I'm going to tell you will make you want to do something stupid, and tea might give you time to think first. She made the tea anyway, set a cup in front of him, sat across the small table, her own cup cradled in both hands. 3 weeks ago, she began, that girl came to my shop, asked for thread to mend a torn dress. When she reached for the shelf, her sleeve pulled up. Pearl's voice was steady. I saw marks. Belt buckle marks. Very specific when metal cut skin. And burns. Cigar-shaped. On her arm. Silas's hands tightened around the cup. I was 14 when a man burned me with a branding iron. Pearl pushed up her sleeve, showed him a scar, old and white, shaped like a letter. For spilling tea. I was indentured. Took me 6 years to buy my freedom. I know what cruelty looks like, Mr. McAllister. I've worn it on my skin. Why didn't you report it? To who? The sheriff who owes Cornelius money. The judge who plays cards with him every Thursday. The town council that approved his guardianship papers. Pearl shook her head. I'm Chinese. A woman. A former indentured servant. My word against a banker's means nothing. It means something to me. Pearl studied him. Why? You don't know this child. You've spent 3 years pretending the rest of us don't exist. Why do you care now? Silas was quiet for a long moment. Because she asked to stay one night. And I said yes. He met Pearl's eyes. Because she looked at me like I was the last hope she had. And then they took her anyway, and I just stood there. You couldn't have stopped them. Not legally. Legal doesn't mean right. No. Pearl's voice softened. It doesn't. She stood, walked to a cabinet in the corner, pulled out a ledger, set it on the table between them. I keep records of everything I see. Every woman who comes in with bruises, she says came from falling. Every child with marks that don't match the stories. She opened the ledger. The Whitmore girl has been in here 4 times since her father died. Each time more marks. Each time worse. Silas looked at the entries, dates, descriptions. A chronicle of abuse written in careful handwriting. This could help, in court. It could, if anyone believed me, if anyone cared enough to challenge Cornelius Whitmore. Pearl closed the ledger. But you'd need more than this. You'd need proof, documents, witnesses willing to speak. Who else knows? Doc Crane. He's treated the girl twice. He won't talk about it, doctor's confidentiality, but he knows. Pearl hesitated. And there's the secretary, at the bank, Miss Abernathy. She's worked for Cornelius for years, types all his letters, files all his papers. If anyone knows what he's really doing, she'd know. Yes, but she's afraid of him. Everyone's afraid of him. Silas stood. Then I'll give them someone else to be afraid of. Mr. McAllister. Pearl's voice stopped him at the door. You can't do this alone. You can't fight a man like Cornelius with just anger and good intentions. I'm not alone. Silas looked back at her. I've got you, and Doc Crane, and anyone else in this town who's tired of looking the other way. That's not an army. No, it's a start. He walked out into the cold. The sun was high now, weak but present. The snow glittered like broken glass. Across the street, he saw Cornelius Whitmore walking into the bank. The banker paused at the door, looked over, saw Silas watching. He smiled, touched the brim of his hat. Silas didn't move, didn't wave, just stood there, letting Cornelius see exactly what was in his eyes. The smile faltered, just for a moment. Then Cornelius disappeared inside. Doc Crane's office smelled of carbolic acid and old paper. The doctor himself was 65 and bent with something that made his cough sound like gravel in a bucket. You're the 4th person to ask me about that girl today. Crane didn't look up from the bottle of morphine he was measuring. Answer's the same. I can't discuss patients. She's 8 years old. Someone's hurting her. I know that. Then do something. Crane finally looked up. His eyes were tired, hollowed out. With what? My medical opinion against Cornelius Whitmore's money, his lawyers, his friends on the Territorial Council. The doctor shook his head. I've got 3 months to live, maybe less. Consumption. I've watched it take better men than me, and I've watched it do it slow. So you'll just let her suffer. I've let a lot of people suffer, Mr. McAllister. It's what doctors do. We watch people die and tell ourselves we did everything we could. Crane set down the bottle. But you want the truth. I'll give you the truth. That girl came to me 6 weeks ago, said she fell down the stairs, had bruises on her ribs. 3 of them cracked. Silas felt sick. I told Cornelius she needed rest. He smiled, thanked me for my concern, paid his bill in cash. 2 days later, she was back in church, sitting straight-backed in that front pew like nothing happened. Crane's voice cracked. 8 years old, and she's already learned how to pretend. There has to be something we can do. There's one thing. Crane walked to his desk, pulled out a file. I delivered that child, December 1875. I knew both parents. Good people. Simple. Honest. What does that have to do with? Her father came to me before he died. 2 weeks before the wagon accident. Said he was worried. Said Cornelius had been pressuring him to sell his land. Said he'd found something in the old family papers. Something that proved... Crane hesitated. Proved what? He didn't say, but he was scared. Told me if anything happened to him, I should check the stone well at his property. Said the truth was hidden there. Silas leaned forward. Did you check? I tried, after the accident, but Cornelius had already claimed the property as executor, had it fenced off, hired men to guard it. Crane's eyes met his. Whatever Thomas Whitmore found, Cornelius didn't want anyone else finding it. The well. The stone well. On the old Whitmore property, east of town. If there's proof that Cornelius killed that girl's parents, that's where it'll be. Silas stood. Where are you going? To find out what's in that well. Cornelius has guards. Then I'll wait until they leave. And if they don't... Silas put on his hat. Then I'll give them a reason to. Night came cold and clear. The temperature dropped to 20 below. The kind of cold that froze breath before it left your lips. Silas rode east away from town, away from the ranch toward the Whitmore property. The moon was full, turning the snow silver and blue. He'd left Consuelo a note. Simple, direct. If I'm not back by dawn, ride to Pearl Chin's. Tell her to gather everyone. Tell her to fight. The Whitmore homestead appeared out of the darkness. What was left of it? Charred timbers, scorched orchard. The house was gone, burned to the ground 4 months after the wagon accident. But the stone well still stood. Gray against white. Solid. And there was a guard. One man huddled by a fire rifle across his knees. Silas dismounted, tied his horse to a tree 100 yards back, moved through the snow on foot, silent. The guard was young, early 20s, half asleep by the dying fire. Silas was 10 feet away when the man heard him. Started to rise, started to reach for his rifle. Don't! The guard froze. Silas's gun was already drawn, already aimed. I'm not here to hurt you, but I will if I have to. You're McAllister. The guard's voice shook. The crazy rancher. That's what they say. Silas stepped closer. You're going to get on your horse and ride back to town. You're going to tell Cornelius that you saw nothing, heard nothing. And if you're smart, you'll keep riding until you're somewhere he can't find you. He'll kill me. He'll try. Silas's eyes were hard. But I'm standing here right now, and he's not. Make your choice. The guard made his choice. He ran for his horse, mounted up, and disappeared into the darkness without looking back. Silas holstered his gun, walked to the well. The stones were old, covered with ice. He pulled off his gloves, felt along the edges, looking for anything loose. There. A gap. One stone that moved when he pushed. He wedged his fingers in, pulled. The stone came free. Behind it a metal box. Rusted at the seams but intact. Silas pulled it out, set it on the snow, opened it with hands that shook from cold and something else. Inside papers wrapped in oilcloth. A land deed. A will. A wedding photograph, young man and woman, infant in the woman's arms. And a letter. Silas read it by moonlight, his breath coming in white clouds, his heart pounding. My name is Thomas Whitmore. If you're reading this, I'm dead. And Cornelius killed me. He's not my brother, not by blood. Our father adopted him after his parents died. Gave him our name, our home, our trust. He repaid that trust with forgery, with theft, with murder. The land deed in this box is the original. Cornelius has a copy forged with his name as heir. But the original names my daughter Emma Grace as sole beneficiary. And it names my half-brother, the only blood family I have left, as her guardian should anything happen to me. His name is Silas McAllister. We've never met. Our father had him with another woman before he married my mother, a secret he kept until he was dying. I found the letters last year, proof that Silas and I share the same blood. I was going to tell him, was going to ride out to his ranch and introduce myself. But Cornelius found out, threatened me, said if I contacted Silas, if I told anyone about the inheritance, he'd make sure Emmy never saw her 9th birthday. So I hid the truth, buried it in this well, and prayed that somehow, someday, the right person would find it. If you're reading this, you're that person. Please, save my daughter. Tell Silas McAllister that he has a niece, that she needs him, that blood doesn't make family, choice does. But sometimes, you get both. Silas sat in the snow beside the well, the letter in his hands, and felt his whole world shift on its axis. Emmy wasn't just a stranger's child. She was his brother's daughter. She was family, and he'd let them take her. He rode back through the dawn, the letter in his coat, the deed in his saddlebag, proof that Cornelius Whitmore had killed for land he didn't own, and a child he had no right to claim. But proof wasn't enough. Not yet. He needed witnesses. He needed the town to wake up and see what they'd been closing their eyes to. He needed time. And Emmy was running out of it. When he reached the ranch, Consuelo was waiting on the porch. Her face was pale. What happened? Doc Crane came by. An hour ago. Her voice shook. Emmy's sick again. Fever. Worse than before. Where? Cornelius's house. The big one on Maple Street. Consuelo grabbed his arm. Doc says she might not last the week. Says the stress is killing her faster than any infection could. Silas looked at the letter in his hand, at the truth that had been buried for months while an 8-year-old girl suffered. Then we don't have a week. What are you going to do? He mounted his horse, turned toward town. Whatever I have to. Silas reached town before the church bells finished ringing 9. Sunday morning. The whole town would be gathered in one place. Perfect. He dismounted outside the white clapboard church, tied his horse to the rail, and walked through the front doors without slowing down. Every head turned. 80 people packed into wooden pews, all of them staring at the man who hadn't set foot in church since he buried his wife. Reverend Hicks stopped mid-sentence. His Bible hung open in his hands. Mr. McAllister, we weren't expecting... I need to speak. This is a house of worship, sir. If you could wait until... No. Silas walked down the center aisle. His boots rang on the wooden floor. Each step echoed in the sudden silence. Cornelius Whitmore sat in the third pew. Gold watch chain. Pressed suit. Emmy beside him, small and pale. Her hands folded in her lap, like someone had arranged them there. She looked up when Silas passed. Her eyes widened. Hope flickered there, then died. She'd learned not to hope. Silas turned at the altar, faced the congregation. I know what you think of me. Crazy rancher, recluse, man who let grief turn him into a ghost. His voice was rough but steady. I've earned that reputation. 3 years of silence. 3 years of pretending the rest of you didn't exist. Murmurs rippled through the pews. But I'm done being silent. Because last night a child collapsed at my gate, burning with fever. Beaten so bad she's got belt marks on her back and cigar burns on her arms. And when I tried to help her, this man, he pointed at Cornelius, came with the sheriff and dragged her away. Cornelius stood slowly. His face was calm, but something flickered in his eyes. Mr. McAllister, I understand your concern is well-intentioned, but this is a family matter. My niece. She's not your niece. The church went dead silent. Silas pulled the letter from his coat. Her father wrote this before he died, before his wagon accident. He held it up so everyone could see. Want me to read it? Want the whole town to hear what Thomas Whitmore knew about you? Cornelius's face went white, then red. That's stolen property. It's the truth, and it says you killed him. The congregation erupted, voices overlapping, people standing craning to see. Mrs. Hartford in the front row clutched her pearls like they might protect her. Order! Reverend Hicks banged his Bible on the pulpit. Order, please! Cornelius's voice cut through the chaos. This man is deranged. He's been unstable since his wife's death. Everyone knows it. And now he's making wild accusations based on a letter he claims to have found. I found it in the well. The stone well on Thomas Whitmore's property. The one you've had guarded since the day he died. Silas took a step toward Cornelius. Why would you guard a well, Cornelius? What were you so afraid someone might find? I was protecting my brother's property. He wasn't your brother, not by blood. Your father adopted you, and when he died, when Thomas inherited everything, you couldn't stand it. So you forged documents, stole land, and when Thomas figured it out, you killed him. Cornelius lunged forward. Two men from the pews grabbed him, held him back. You have no proof. His voice cracked. The smooth banker's tone was gone. A letter. Anyone could have written that. Then explain the deed I found with it. The real deed. The one that names Emma Grace Whitmore as sole heir to her father's land. Not you, her. Emmy made a sound. Small. Strangled. She was staring at Silas like he'd just told her the sky was green. And explain this. Silas's voice dropped. The letter names me as her guardian. Because Thomas Whitmore and I share the same father. Different mothers. Same blood. The congregation went still. That girl isn't just some orphan I took in out of charity. She's my niece, my family, and you've been beating her, burning her, stealing her inheritance for 8 months while this whole town looked the other way. Cornelius wrenched free from the men holding him. His hand went to his vest pocket. Something glinted there. You're lying. Am I? Silas held out the deed. Then let's test it. Let Judge Harrison examine the documents, the ones you filed, the ones Thomas wrote. Let's see which one's real and which one's forged. Judge Harrison is a friend of mine. Then we'll find a judge who isn't. Cornelius's eyes darted around the church, looking for allies, finding fewer than he expected. Jenkins, the general store owner, stepped into the aisle. I've known Silas McAllister for 20 years. He's not a liar. Mrs. Jenkins stood beside her husband. And I knew Thomas Whitmore's wife. She wouldn't have married a man who'd leave his daughter to someone like you. More voices. People standing, taking sides. Pearl Chin rose from the back pew. Her voice was quiet, but carried. I've seen the marks on that child. Belt buckle cuts, cigar burns. I know what cruelty looks like. I've worn it on my own skin. She pushed up her sleeve. The brand mark showed white against her wrist. That girl has been beaten for months, and everyone in this town knew something was wrong, but you were all too scared to say it, too scared of him. She pointed at Cornelius. I'm not scared anymore. Doc Crane stood next. He had to brace himself on the pew in front of him. His cough was worse than yesterday. I've treated Emmy Whitmore twice since her father died. Cracked ribs, bruises, burns. Each time Cornelius paid my bill in cash and told me to keep quiet. The doctor's voice broke. I'm dying. Got maybe 3 months left. I won't spend them protecting a man who hurts children. The church was splitting. Half the congregation on their feet, voices raised, some defending Cornelius, most turning against him. Reverend Hicks stepped down from the pulpit. His face was pale but determined. Cornelius Whitmore, I think it's time you answered these accusations. In front of God and this community. Cornelius's hand tightened on whatever was in his vest pocket. You want answers? Fine. Here's your answer. He grabbed Emmy's arm, yanked her to her feet. She cried out the first sound she'd made. This child is my legal ward. I have papers signed by a territorial judge. Whatever letters this madman claims to have found, they don't change the law. They don't change my guardianship, and they don't give him the right to steal my property. She's not property. Silas's voice was deadly quiet. She's 8 years old. She can't own land. She can't sign contracts. She can't do anything without a guardian's approval. And that guardian is me. Cornelius pulled Emmy closer. She was shaking. So unless you want to challenge me in court, I do. The words dropped like stones into still water. I'm filing for custody, tomorrow morning, and I'm bringing evidence that you killed her father to steal his land, that you've been beating his daughter for 8 months, that you've forged documents and bribed officials and lied to everyone in this territory. Cornelius's face twisted. The mask was gone now. What showed underneath was ugly. You'll lose. Maybe. Silas took a step forward. But I'll make sure everyone sees what you really are. I'll make sure this whole territory knows. And even if the law takes your side, you'll spend the rest of your life knowing that people look at you and see a murderer. Emmy spoke then. Her voice was small, but clear. He killed my papa. Everyone froze. I heard him. The night before the wagon. Uncle said the brakes would fail. Said accidents happen on mountain roads. Said Papa should have sold when he had the chance. Cornelius's grip tightened on her arm. She winced, but didn't stop. Papa told me to remember. Said if anything happened, I should tell someone. But Uncle said if I told, I'd go where Mama went. Mama died in a fire. Her eyes found Silas. I've been scared for so long. I don't want to be scared anymore. Silas moved. Faster than Cornelius expected. His hand closed around the banker's wrist and twisted. Cornelius yelped. His grip on Emmy broke. She stumbled. Pearl caught her, pulled her away. Silas didn't let go of Cornelius's wrist. You're going to take your hands off her. You're going to walk out of this church, and you're going to pray that the law gets to you before I do. You're threatening me. I'm promising you. Cornelius tried to pull free. Couldn't. Silas was older, but he'd spent 30 years working cattle. His grip was iron. Sheriff, Cornelius's voice cracked. Sheriff Coulter, this man is assaulting me. Tom Coulter stood in the back of the church. He hadn't moved through any of it. His badge caught the light from the windows. He didn't come forward. Tom. The sheriff's voice was quiet. I heard what the girl said, Cornelius. I heard what the doctor said. I heard what Pearl Chin said. He shook his head slowly. I've been taking your money for 2 years, looking the other way, telling myself it wasn't my business. He unpinned his badge, set it on the nearest pew. I'm done. Cornelius's face went gray. Silas released his wrist, stepped back. Get out, and don't come near her again. Cornelius straightened his coat. His hands were shaking. He looked around the church at the people who'd supported him yesterday, who'd taken his money, who'd called him friend. None of them would meet his eyes. He walked out. The doors swung shut behind him. The sound echoed in the silence. Emmy was crying. Quiet tears streaming down her face. Pearl held her close. Silas knelt in front of them. His voice was rough. Emmy, look at me. She looked. I found your papa's letter. I know what he wanted, and I know who you are. He took her hand, small fingers cold despite the warmth of the church. You're my brother's daughter, my niece, and I'm not going to let anyone hurt you ever again. Promise. He'd already made her that promise once. He'd broken it. This time, he said, I'll die before I let them take you. She believed him. He could see it in her eyes, the hope that had died flickering back to life. Can we go home now? Home. She'd called it home. Yeah. His voice cracked. We can go home. They didn't make it home. Halfway to the ranch, Emmy collapsed. One moment she was riding in front of Silas, holding the saddle horn with both hands. The next, she went limp. He caught her before she fell. Her forehead was burning. The fever had spiked again. Consuelo! He was shouting before they reached the house. Consuelo, get water, get medicine, get everything. The next hours blurred together. Cool cloths on Emmy's forehead. Willow bark tea spooned between her lips. Doc Crane arriving examining her, his face growing grimmer with each minute. The fever's too high. Her body's been under too much stress for too long. She's fighting, but what? Doc looked at him. His eyes were tired, resigned. She might not win this one. No. Silas's voice was sharp. She's going to make it. McAllister. She didn't survive 8 months of hell just to die now. She didn't crawl through a blizzard to my gate just to give up. She's going to make it. Doc didn't argue. He just kept working, changed the compresses, adjusted the medicine dosages, did everything he could. At midnight, Emmy opened her eyes. Silas was sitting beside the bed. He hadn't moved in hours, hadn't eaten, hadn't slept. Papa Silas, he leaned forward. I'm here. Am I dying? The question hit him like a fist. She asked it the way she asked everything, flat matter of fact, like she was asking about the weather. No. It feels like dying. Everything's heavy. He took her hand. You're going to be fine. Doc's taking care of you. Consuelo's making soup. And I'm not going anywhere. You promise? I promise. She was quiet for a moment. Then, my papa used to make promises. He said he'd always protect me. But then he died. That wasn't his choice. I know. Her eyes were too old for 8 years. Uncle made that choice for him. Silas's jaw tightened. Can I tell you something? Emmy's voice was fading, the fever pulling her back under. A secret? Anything. Papa said, he said I had family I didn't know about, said someday I'd meet them, said they'd... She struggled to keep her eyes open. Said they'd love me like he did. Silas couldn't speak. His throat was too tight. Was he talking about you? He nodded. That was all he could manage. Emmy smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. I'm glad. Her eyes closed. I'm glad you're my family. She slept. The fever held, but it didn't climb. Doc checked her pulse, checked her breathing, and finally allowed himself to exhale. She's stable, for now. For now. She needs rest, real rest. Not the kind of rest you get when you're afraid someone's going to hit you. Doc gathered his things. Keep her warm, keep her calm, and keep Cornelius away from her. That won't be a problem. Won't it? Doc paused at the door. A man like that doesn't give up easy. You embarrassed him today, in front of the whole town. He'll want revenge. Let him come. That's what I'm afraid of. Doc coughed hard, deep, the kind of cough that came from lungs that were giving up. Watch your back, McAllister, and hers. He left. The house went quiet, except for Emmy's breathing and the crackle of the fire. Silas sat in the dark, watching his niece sleep, and thought about revenge, about what Cornelius might do, about how far a cornered man might go. The answer came at dawn. Boss, Miguel's voice. Urgent. Silas was on his feet before his eyes were fully open. What is it? Barn's on fire? He ran. The cold air hit him like a wall, but he barely felt it. The barn was fully engulfed, flames reaching for the sky, black smoke billowing across the yard. The horses, the cattle, everything. Miguel and 3 other ranch hands were already working, trying to get the animals out. Silas joined them, fighting through smoke and heat, grabbing halters and leading panicked horses through the flames. They saved most of them. Most. When the fire finally burned itself out, 6 horses were dead, 20 head of cattle. And the barn was gone, nothing left but charred timber and ash. Silas stood in the ruins, his face blackened, his hands burned, his chest heaving. Boss, Miguel's voice was grim. Found this. He held up a kerosene can. Empty. It was by the east wall. Someone set this deliberate. Silas took the can. stared at it. Cornelius. There's more. Miguel pointed toward the gate. Man came by an hour before dawn. Said he had a message for you. What message? Said you should have stayed out of family business. Said next time, it won't be the barn. Consuelo appeared on the porch. Her face was pale. Emmy's awake. She heard the noise. She's scared. Silas looked at the burned barn, at the kerosene can in his hands, at his house, where an 8-year-old girl waited for him to tell her everything was going to be okay. Stay with her. Don't let anyone in unless you know them. Where are you going? He threw the kerosene can into the ruins. It clattered against the charred wood. To end this. The bank opened at 8. Silas was waiting when Cornelius arrived. The banker stopped short when he saw him. Something flickered across his face, fear maybe, or calculation. Mr. McAllister, I heard about your barn. Terrible tragedy. You know it wasn't a tragedy. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. You sent a man to burn it. Same man who cut the brakes on Thomas Whitmore's wagon. Cornelius's eye twitched. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. People were gathering on the sidewalk. Word traveled fast in Bitter Creek. By now, everyone knew about the confrontation in church. Everyone knew about the fire. If you're looking to make another scene, Cornelius began, I'm looking to make a deal. That stopped him. His eyes narrowed. What kind of deal? You sign over guardianship, walk away, leave town, and I don't show the sheriff the evidence I have that you committed murder. You don't have evidence. I have the letter, the deed, the testimony of a dying doctor and a Chinese seamstress who aren't afraid of you anymore. Silas stepped closer. And I have an 8-year-old girl who heard you planning her father's death. Think that'll hold up in court? Cornelius's face went red, then white, then something in between. You can't prove any of it. Maybe not. But I can make sure everyone believes it. I can make sure every time you walk down the street, people cross to the other side. I can make sure no one does business with you. No one invites you to dinner. No one lets their children near you. Silas's voice dropped. I can make your life hell, Cornelius. Slow and permanent. You'd destroy yourself in the process. I'm already destroyed. Lost my wife. My son. Spent 3 years wishing I was dead. He leaned in. You can't hurt a man who's got nothing left to lose. Cornelius was quiet. His hand went to his vest pocket, the same gesture he'd made in church. There's another option. What? Cornelius smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I have friends. In the territorial government. In the courts. Friends who owe me favors. He pulled out his pocket watch, clicked it open, looked at the time. By this afternoon I'll have a new warrant. Not for custody. For your arrest. On what charge? Kidnapping, assault, theft of legal documents. The watch snapped shut. You attacked me in church. Dozens of witnesses saw it. And you admitted to taking papers from property I control as executor. That property belongs to Emmy. That property belongs to whoever the law says it belongs to. And right now, the law is on my side. Silas felt the ground shifting under him. He'd come here to threaten, to push Cornelius into surrender. Instead, Cornelius was pushing back. You think I didn't plan for this? The banker's voice was smooth again, confident. You think I've survived in business for 20 years without learning how to handle men like you? You're not the first person who's tried to expose me. You won't be the last. What happened to the others? They learned that fighting me was more expensive than it was worth. Cornelius tucked his watch away. You've got a nice ranch, McAllister. 2,000 acres, 400 head of cattle. Well, 380 now. He smiled at his own joke. Be a shame if something happened to the rest. You're threatening me. I'm educating you. There's a difference. The crowd on the sidewalk had grown. 30 people now, maybe more. All of them watching. All of them listening. Pearl Chin stepped forward from the crowd. "Cornelius Whitmore, you're a murderer and a thief." He turned. His face darkened. "Miss Chin, shouldn't you be hemming someone's trousers? I was indentured for 6 years. Bought my freedom with money I saved stitch by stitch. And the man who owned me talked just like you. Smooth and smart and sure that no one would ever touch him." Pearl's voice didn't waver. "He died in prison. Hung himself when they took everything he had. Is that supposed to frighten me? It's supposed to remind you that no one's untouchable, not even you." Jenkins stepped forward, his wife beside him. "I owe you $400, Cornelius. You call that loan, I lose my store." Jenkins's voice shook, but he kept going. "But I'd rather lose my store than watch you hurt that child anymore. So call it. Do your worst. See if anyone in this town does business with you after." More voices. More people stepping forward. The schoolteacher. The blacksmith. The widow Henderson who ran the boarding house. "I saw bruises on that girl 2 months ago," she said. "Asked her what happened. She said she fell. But I knew. I knew, and I said nothing." Her voice cracked. "I'm done saying nothing." Cornelius looked around at the faces closing in. The smooth confidence was cracking. "You're all making a mistake." "Maybe," Silas said. "But we're making it together." The doors to the bank opened. Miss Abernathy stood in the doorway. Gray hair, 60 years old, hands shaking. She was holding a stack of papers. "I've worked for you for 12 years, Mr. Whitmore." Her voice was barely audible. "Typed every letter, filed every document, kept every secret." Cornelius's face went gray. "Abernathy, whatever you're doing, I'm doing what I should have done years ago." She walked toward the crowd, toward Silas. "These are copies. Every forged document, every bribe, every payment to every official you've bought off." She held out the papers. 6 orphaned estates, $4,200, all of it stolen from children who had no one to protect them. Silas took the papers. His hands were steady. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. I should have done this the first time I saw that little girl flinch when someone raised their voice." Abernathy's eyes filled with tears. "I should have done it years ago." Cornelius backed toward the bank doors. "This isn't over." "Yeah," Silas said. "It is. You think these papers mean anything? You think these people will stand by you when it costs them? When I call their loans? When you what?" Sheriff Coulter stepped through the crowd. He'd pinned his badge back on. "Cornelius Whitmore, you're under arrest." "On what charge, you can't?" "Fraud, embezzlement, child endangerment." Coulter pulled out handcuffs. "And suspicion of murder." "This is outrageous. I have rights, You have the right to shut up." Coulter grabbed his arm. "Use it." The handcuffs clicked shut. That sound metal on metal rang through the morning air like a bell. Cornelius looked at Silas. His face was twisted with rage. "This isn't over, McAllister. I've got lawyers. I've got connections. I'll be out by nightfall." "Maybe?" Silas stepped close enough to whisper. "But Emmy will be safe, and you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering when I'm coming for you." The sheriff led Cornelius away. The crowd parted to let them through. Silas stood in the middle of Main Street, the papers in his hands, the sun rising over the mountains to the east. It wasn't over. Not yet. There would be lawyers and courts and fights to come. But for the first time in 3 years, he felt something other than grief. He felt like he was alive again. Emmy was sitting up when he got home. The fever had broken. Her color was better pink instead of gray. Consuelo had made soup. Emmy was eating it slowly, carefully, like she still wasn't sure the food wouldn't be taken away. She looked up when Silas walked in. "You smell like smoke." "Yeah. Had a fire this morning." "I know. Consuelo told me." She set down her spoon. "Was it Uncle Cornelius?" It was. Is he going to burn the house too? No. Silas sat down beside her. The sheriff arrested him. He's in jail. Emmy was quiet for a long moment. Really? Really? He's not coming back. Not if I have anything to say about it. Her eyes filled with tears. Not scared tears. Not sad tears. Something else. I didn't think anyone would believe me. I believe you. I know. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. That's why I'm crying. Silas didn't know what to say. He'd spent 3 years learning how to be alone. He didn't know how to be with someone again. Didn't know how to comfort a child who'd been through more than most adults could survive. But Emmy didn't need words. She just leaned against him, small and warm and alive. Papa Silas. Yeah. Can I really stay? As long as you want. What if I want forever? His throat closed up. Then forever it is. She nodded, picked up her spoon, went back to eating her soup, and Silas sat there in the house that had been silent for 3 years and listened to the sound of a child breathing. It wasn't much, but it was everything. 3 days passed. Cornelius stayed in jail, and Silas learned that arrested didn't mean defeated. The telegram arrived on Wednesday morning. Miguel brought it up from town, his face grim. From Helena Boss, Territorial Court. Silas read it twice. The words didn't change. What is it? Consuelo stood in the doorway, dish towel in her hands. Cornelius filed a motion. Claims the arrest was unlawful. Says Sheriff Coulter had no jurisdiction because the alleged crimes occurred outside town limits. Silas crumpled the paper. He's got a hearing scheduled for Friday. Judge Morrison. That's not Judge Harrison. No, Morrison's from the territorial capital. Cornelius must have called in favors. Emmy appeared behind Consuelo. She'd been getting stronger every day, eating more, sleeping better. But her eyes still went dark whenever Cornelius's name was mentioned. Is he getting out? Silas looked at her. 8 years old, and she understood the system better than most adults. I don't know. He has friends, important friends. Papa used to say that's how men like Uncle Cornelius win. They don't fight fair. Then we won't fight fair either. Emmy tilted her head. What does that mean? It means we need more evidence. Something even his friends can't ignore. Pearl Chin arrived that afternoon. She came in a borrowed wagon, and she wasn't alone. Miss Abernathy sat beside her, clutching a leather satchel like her life depended on it. We need to talk, Pearl said. Inside, away from windows. They gathered in the kitchen. Consuelo made coffee. Emmy sat in the corner, quiet but listening. She'd learned young that important things happened when adults thought children weren't paying attention. Abernathy remembered something, Pearl began. Something that might change everything. The secretary's hands shook as she opened her satchel. I've been Cornelius's secretary for 12 years. I've typed thousands of letters. Most of them I forgot the moment I finished. But there was one. She pulled out a worn piece of paper. 3 weeks before Thomas Whitmore's accident. Silas took the letter. Read it aloud. Dear Mr. Whitmore, your continued refusal to sell is noted. However, I must remind you that accidents happen frequently on mountain roads. Brake cables wear. Wheels slip. A man with a young daughter should consider such risks carefully. Regards, C.W. The kitchen went silent. He wrote it down, Silas said. He actually wrote down a threat. He was arrogant. Abernathy's voice was barely audible. He never thought anyone would turn against him. Never thought I'd keep a copy. Why did you? Because I knew. Tears ran down her face. I knew what he was going to do, and I was too scared to stop him. So I kept the letter. Told myself someday it would matter. Someday I'd be brave enough. Pearl put a hand on her shoulder. You're brave now. That's what matters. Silas looked at the letter, at the signature, at the date. This proves premeditation. This proves he planned the murder weeks in advance. It proves he's careful, Pearl said, and careful men don't leave evidence lying around unless they're sure they'll never need it. What do you mean? Pearl hesitated. Abernathy told me something else, something she wasn't sure she should share. Tell me. Abernathy's hands twisted in her lap. Cornelius has a safe, in his office, behind the portrait of his father. I've never seen inside, but I've seen him open it, late at night when he thought everyone had gone home. What's in it? I don't know, but whatever it is, he checks it every day, first thing in the morning, last thing at night, like he's making sure it's still there. Silas stood, his chair scraped against the floor. Where's the sheriff? In town, guarding Cornelius. Then we need to get into that safe before Friday. Pearl shook her head. That's breaking and entering. Even if you find something, it won't be admissible in court. It will if we get the sheriff to do it. Coulter won't break into a citizen's property without a warrant. Then we get a warrant. From who Judge Morrison is in Cornelius's pocket. Judge Harrison owes him money. Every judge in the territory. Not every judge. Emmy's voice cut through the argument. Everyone turned. Papa had a friend, a judge from before, from back east. He came to visit once when I was little. Papa said he was the most honest man he ever knew. Silas knelt in front of her. Do you remember his name? Emmy's forehead wrinkled. Papa called him Sam, but his real name was longer. Samuel something. Samuel what, Emmy? Think hard. She closed her eyes. Her lips moved silently, working through memories that were half faded with time and trauma. Hawthorne. Her eyes opened. Samuel Hawthorne. He's a federal judge now. Papa was so proud when he got the appointment. Silas looked at Pearl. A federal judge outranks territorial judges. If he'll get involved in a territorial matter. He will. Silas stood. Because Thomas Whitmore was his friend, and his friend's daughter needs help. The telegram to Judge Hawthorne went out that night. Silas paid for express delivery, which meant it would reach Denver by morning. Then he waited. Thursday was the longest day of his life. Emmy followed him around the ranch, helping with chores, asking questions about cattle and horses and the way things worked. She was hungry for normalcy, for the kind of boring daily life that most children took for granted. Papa Silas. Yeah. Do you think the judge will help? I hope so. But you're not sure. He stopped, looked at her. No, I'm not sure. What if he doesn't? Then we find another way. What if there isn't another way? He knelt down eye level with her. Emmy, listen to me. I spent 3 years giving up, telling myself there was no point in trying, no point in hoping. And then you showed up at my gate, half dead, asking for one night. I remember. You didn't give up. You walked through a blizzard because giving up meant going back to him. You fought to survive because you believed there was something worth surviving for. He put his hands on her shoulders. I'm not giving up either, not on you, not ever. Her eyes filled. Papa said the same thing, before he died. Then let's prove him right. The reply came Friday morning, 1 hour before Cornelius's hearing was scheduled to begin. Miguel rode up from town at full gallop, the telegram in his hand. From Denver boss, Judge Hawthorne. Silas read it again. His hands started shaking. What does it say? Emmy was at his elbow trying to see. Silas picked her up, held her tight. He's coming. He's on the next train. He's taking jurisdiction of the case. What does that mean? It means Cornelius's hearing is canceled. It means a federal judge is going to review all the evidence. It means... His voice cracked. It means we might actually win this. Emmy hugged him, fierce and desperate. Papa was right about you. What did he say? He said if I ever needed help to find the man at the big ranch east of town. Said he was family, even if he didn't know it yet. Said you'd protect me. Silas couldn't speak. His brother had trusted him, had sent his daughter to him, had believed in him even after 15 years of silence. And he hadn't known, hadn't been there, hadn't. It's not your fault. Emmy's voice was small. Papa said that too. Said whatever happened between you, it wasn't your fault. Said pride makes people stupid, but love makes them brave. He said all that. He talked about you a lot, especially at the end. I think he knew something bad was going to happen. She pulled back, looked at him. He wanted you to know he forgave you, for whatever it was. Silas set her down, walked to the window, stared out at the mountains. 15 years of silence. 15 years of thinking his brother hated him. And Thomas had forgiven him, had trusted him, had loved him even from a distance. Papa Silas. He turned. Emmy was standing there, small and solemn. Are you okay? No. His voice was rough. But I will be. Judge Samuel Hawthorne arrived on the 4 o'clock train. He was 60 years old, white-haired, with eyes that had seen everything and judged most of it harshly. Silas met him at the station. They shook hands in silence. You're the brother, Hawthorne said. I am. Thomas talked about you, said you were the best man he ever knew and the most stubborn. He was right about the stubborn part. He was right about both parts. Hawthorne's grip tightened. Now, take me to see my friend's daughter. Emmy was waiting on the porch when they arrived. She'd put on her best dress, the blue calico Pearl had made. Her hair was brushed and braided. She looked like what she was, a child trying desperately to make a good impression. Hawthorne walked up the steps slowly, stopped in front of her. You look like your mother. Emmy's eyes widened. You knew my mama. I was at their wedding, held you when you were 3 days old. You screamed the entire time. He smiled. You've got a strong voice, Emma Grace. Don't ever let anyone silence it. I won't. Good. He turned to Silas. Now, show me what you've got. They spread the evidence across the kitchen table. Thomas's letter from the well, the original deed, the forged documents from Cornelius's files, Abernathy's ledgers, the threat letter. Hawthorne examined each piece. His face revealed nothing. The threat letter, he said finally. Where did this come from? Abernathy stepped forward. I kept a copy, from when I typed the original. You were Whitmore's secretary. Yes, Your Honor. For how long? 12 years. And in those 12 years you saw him commit multiple crimes. Fraud, embezzlement, possibly murder. Hawthorne's voice was cold. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Abernathy's face crumpled. I was afraid. Afraid of what? Losing your position, being ostracized. Afraid of dying. Her voice broke. He killed Thomas Whitmore for refusing to sell land. What do you think he'd do to a secretary who knew too much? Hawthorne was silent for a long moment. You're right. I apologize for my tone. He picked up the threat letter. This is damning, combined with the forged documents and the testimony of multiple witnesses. Is it enough? Silas asked. For fraud and embezzlement? Absolutely. For murder? Hawthorne hesitated. The letter implies intent, but it doesn't prove he actually cut those brake cables. We need more. There's the safe, Pearl said. In his office. Abernathy says he checks it obsessively. A safe we haven't opened. A safe we don't have legal access to. Hawthorne shook his head. I can't authorize a search without probable cause. A threat letter and 6 counts of fraud isn't probable cause? For the fraud, yes. For the safe, I'd need something connecting the safe specifically to the murder. Emmy spoke up. I know what's in the safe. Everyone turned. Uncle Cornelius showed me once, after Papa died. He said it was my inheritance, said he was keeping it safe for me. Her voice was flat. He showed me Papa's watch, the one Mama gave him on their wedding day, and he showed me the brake cable. Hawthorne leaned forward. The brake cable. The one from the wagon. He kept it. Said it was a reminder of what happens to people who don't cooperate. The room went dead silent. He showed you the murder weapon, Hawthorne said slowly, and told you it was a warning. Yes, sir. Why didn't you tell anyone? Emmy's eyes went dark. Who would believe me? I'm 8 years old. He's a banker, and he said if I told he'd... She stopped, her hands curled into fists. He'd what? He'd make sure I had an accident too, just like Papa. Silas's hand went to his gun. Pearl grabbed his arm. Not yet, she whispered. Let the law handle it. Hawthorne stood. His face was carved from granite. Sheriff Coulter. Tom had been standing in the corner silent throughout the discussion. He stepped forward. Your Honor, I'm issuing a federal warrant for the search of Cornelius Whitmore's office, specifically the safe behind the portrait. We're looking for evidence related to the murder of Thomas Whitmore. Hawthorne's voice was ice. If that brake cable is where the child says it is, Cornelius Whitmore will hang. They went that night. Silas Hawthorne, Sheriff Coulter, and 2 deputies. Pearl stayed with Emmy, both of them waiting by the window. The bank was dark. Cornelius's office was locked. Coulter broke the door down without hesitation. The portrait hung where Abernathy said it would. Behind it, a wall safe with a combination lock. Do we know the combination? Coulter asked. No. Hawthorne turned to Silas. Can you open it? Silas studied the safe. Standard model. 3 numbers. Get me a stethoscope. You know how to crack a safe. I know how to listen. He thought of Emmy learning to read the herd by ear. My father taught me, said a man should know how to get into anything he might need to get out of. The stethoscope came from Doc Crane's office. The doctor himself was too weak to come, but he sent the tool with a note, make him pay. Silas pressed the stethoscope to the safe door, turned the dial slowly, listening for the click of tumblers falling into place. The first number 17, the second 42, the third 8. The safe swung open. Inside papers, money, a velvet box, and a length of brake cable cut clean at both ends. Hawthorne reached in, pulled out the cable, held it up to the lamplight. It's been cut, not worn, cut with a blade. Silas felt something release in his chest, something that had been coiled tight since the night he found Thomas's letter in the well. That's it. That's the proof. It's more than proof. Hawthorne's voice was grim. It's a confession. He kept the murder weapon, kept it as a trophy. Why would anyone do that? Because he's arrogant, because he thought he was untouchable, because some men need to remind themselves of their victories. Hawthorne set the cable on the desk. It's also evidence that he's done this before. What do you mean? Hawthorne reached back into the safe, pulled out a wooden box, opened it. Inside 5 more pieces of cable, each one cut clean, each one labeled with a name and a date. 6 cables. Hawthorne's voice was barely audible. 6 murders. Silas read the labels, names he recognized. Families that had died in accidents over the past decade. All of them had disputed property. All of them had fought Cornelius in one way or another. All of them had lost. Mother of God, Coulter crossed himself. He's been doing this for years. And no one noticed. Hawthorne closed the box. No one cared enough to look. He turned to Silas. Your brother was the 7th. If Emmy hadn't survived, if she hadn't walked through that blizzard to your gate, Cornelius would still be counting his money and planning his next victim. Silas looked at the cables, at the names, at the evidence of a decade of murder sitting in a banker's safe like it was just another asset. What happens now? Now, Hawthorne picked up the box. Now we show this to the territorial governor. Now we contact the families of every person on these labels. Now we make sure Cornelius Whitmore never hurts anyone again. And Emmy. Hawthorne looked at him. She's your niece, your blood, and as of this moment, you're her legal guardian. I'll sign the papers myself. Silas's legs went weak. He had to brace himself against the desk. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank your brother. He raised a brave daughter, and he trusted you to protect her. Hawthorne paused at the door. Don't let him down. They walked back to the ranch in silence. The stars were bright overhead. The cold bit at exposed skin. But Silas didn't feel it. He was thinking about Thomas, about the letter in the well, about all the things his brother had done to protect Emmy, even from beyond the grave. Blood doesn't make family. Choice does. But sometimes you get both. He understood now. Thomas hadn't just been hiding evidence. He'd been reaching out, trying to connect, trying to tell Silas that whatever had happened between them, family was still family. And Silas had been too wrapped up in his own grief to notice. Emmy was waiting on the porch when they arrived. She ran to him before he could dismount. Did you find it? We found everything. The cable too. The cable too. Her face crumpled. Not with sadness, with relief. Papa can rest now, can't he? Silas picked her up, held her tight. Yeah, sweetheart. He can rest. The next morning, Cornelius Whitmore was transferred to territorial custody. The charges had multiplied overnight. 6 counts of murder, 12 counts of fraud, 8 counts of embezzlement, and 1 count of child endangerment. Judge Hawthorne supervised the transfer personally. He wanted to make sure there were no accidents along the way. Silas watched from the porch as the prison wagon rolled past the ranch gate. Cornelius's face was visible through the barred window, pale, furious, terrified. Their eyes met. Silas didn't look away. He's scared, Emmy said. She was standing beside him, her hand in his. He should be. Is it bad that I'm glad? Silas thought about it. About justice and mercy and the complicated space between them. No, it's not bad. He hurt you. He killed your papa. He deserves to be scared. He squeezed her hand. But don't let his fear become your happiness. Don't let him take up any more space in your life than he already has. What should I think about instead? The future, the ranch, the apple trees we're going to plant at your papa's old place. He looked down at her. The life you're going to have. The person you're going to become. Emmy was quiet for a long moment. Papa Silas. Yeah. I think I want to learn about cattle, like you. I want to know how to read the herd. That can be arranged. And I want to learn numbers, how to keep the books, so no one can cheat me like Uncle Cornelius cheated Papa. That too. And I want... She hesitated. What? I want to stay here, forever, even when I'm grown up, even when I can go anywhere. Her voice was small. Is that okay? Silas knelt down, eye level with her. This is your home, for as long as you want it, forever, if that's what you choose. You mean it? I mean it. She hugged him, fierce and desperate the way she did everything. I love you, Papa Silas. The words hit him like a punch. 3 years of silence. 3 years of thinking he'd never hear those words again. I love you too, Emmy. And for the first time since he buried his wife and son, Silas McAllister cried. Not from grief, from joy. The trial was set for 3 weeks away. Judge Hawthorne was overseeing the prosecution personally. 6 families would testify. 12 witnesses would take the stand. And Emmy, if she was willing, would tell her story to a courtroom full of strangers. You don't have to do it, Silas told her. We have enough evidence without your testimony. I want to. Are you sure? She looked at him with eyes that were too old for 8 years. Uncle Cornelius told me to be quiet. For 8 months I was quiet. I did what he said. I pretended everything was fine. I let him hurt me because I thought that's what I had to do to survive. Emmy, I'm done being quiet." Her voice was steady. "I'm done letting him win. And I'm done being afraid." Silas pulled her into a hug. "Your papa would be proud." "I know." She smiled against his chest. "He told me so, in my dreams." "He did. He comes sometimes. When I'm sleeping, he doesn't say much, just sits by my bed and watches, like he's making sure I'm okay." Silas thought about his own dreams. The ones where Sarah appeared holding their son. The ones where she smiled at him and said nothing but somehow said everything. "I think the people we love never really leave us." "I think so too." They stood there in the kitchen holding each other. And outside, spring was coming. The morning of the trial, Emmy wouldn't eat breakfast. "I'm not hungry." "You need to eat something." Silas pushed the plate closer. "It's going to be a long day." "My stomach hurts." "That's nerves. It'll pass." "What if I forget what to say?" Silas set down his coffee. "Emmy, look at me." She looked. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. "You're not going to forget. You're going to tell the truth. That's all you have to do. Tell them what happened, what you saw, what you heard." He reached across the table, took her hands. "And I'll be right there. The whole time. You won't be alone." "Promise?" "Promise." She took a bite of toast, chewed slowly, swallowed. "Papa Silas." "Yeah." "What if they don't believe me?" "They'll believe you." "But what if they don't? What if Uncle Cornelius's lawyer says I'm lying? What if the judge thinks I made it all up? Judge Hawthorne knows you're telling the truth. He knew your papa. He knows what kind of man Cornelius is." Silas squeezed her hands. "And even if every person in that courtroom doubted you, I wouldn't. Not for 1 second." Emmy's eyes filled with tears. "I'm scared." "I know. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway." "Did you make that up?" "No. Your papa told me that. In a letter he wrote before he died." "He wrote you a letter." "He wrote me a lot of things. I just didn't find them until it was too late." Silas's voice cracked. "But he was right. About being brave. About being scared. About doing things anyway." Emmy nodded slowly, took another bite of toast. "Okay." "Okay what?" "Okay, I'll do it. I'll tell them everything." The courthouse was packed by 9 o'clock. Every seat filled. People standing along the walls. More people outside trying to get in. Judge Hawthorne had moved the trial to the territorial courthouse in Cheyenne. Bigger building, more space, and more importantly, farther from Cornelius's influence. Silas sat in the front row, Emmy beside him, Pearl Chin on his other side, Consuelo behind them, rosary beads clicking softly in her hands. The prosecutor was a man named William Garrett, 50 years old, gray at the temples, voice like gravel in a bucket. He'd convicted 17 murderers in his career. Cornelius would be 18. The defense attorney was younger, slick, city-educated. His name was Marcus Webb, and he'd made a fortune defending men who couldn't be defended. "All rise." Judge Hawthorne entered. His robes swept the floor. His face was stone. "Be seated." The courtroom settled, rustling fabric, creaking chairs. Then silence. "We are here today for the trial of Cornelius Whitmore. Charges include 6 counts of murder in the first degree, 12 counts of fraud, 8 counts of embezzlement, and 1 count of child endangerment." Hawthorne's voice carried without effort. "Mr. Garrett, you may begin." Garrett stood, walked slowly to the center of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what I'm about to show you will be difficult to hear. It will be difficult to see. It will challenge everything you thought you knew about a man many of you called neighbor, called friend." He paused. Let the words settle. Cornelius Whitmore is not your neighbor. He is not your friend. He is a predator, a killer, a man who murdered 6 people for land, for money, for greed. Webb was on his feet. Objection. Inflammatory. Overruled. Continue, Mr. Garrett. Thank you, Your Honor. Garrett turned to the jury. Over the next 3 days, you will hear testimony from witnesses who saw the truth. You will see evidence that Mr. Whitmore kept in his own safe evidence. He was so arrogant, so confident in his immunity, that he preserved it like a trophy. He walked to the evidence table, picked up the wooden box. 6 brake cables, 6 names, 6 families destroyed, 6 children orphaned. He opened the box, held up the first cable. Henry Morrison died in a wagon accident March 1874, left behind a wife and 3 children. His property was seized by the bank, Mr. Whitmore's bank, within 2 months. He held up the second. Samuel and Martha Reed died together on Miller's Ridge, October 1876. Their son was sent to an orphanage, their land sold to Cornelius Whitmore for a fraction of its value. Third cable. William Tanaka, a Japanese immigrant who'd saved for 15 years to buy 40 acres, died when his wagon went off a cliff June 1879. No family to contest the seizure, no one to ask questions. Fourth. Elizabeth Crow Feather, a Cheyenne woman who'd been granted a homestead under federal treaty, died alone on a mountain road April 1881. Her land was absorbed into Mr. Whitmore's holdings before her body was cold. Fifth. James O'Brien, a rancher who refused to sell his water rights, found at the bottom of a ravine December 1882. Brake cable severed clean. Garrett held up the 6th cable. His voice dropped. Thomas Whitmore, brother to the defendant not by blood but by adoption, father to Emma Grace Whitmore, who sits in this courtroom today, murdered in June of 1883 because he discovered the truth and refused to stay silent. He set the cable down, turned to face Cornelius. 6 people, 10 years, and not a single investigation, not a single question. Because Cornelius Whitmore was smart. He was careful. He was powerful. Garrett's voice hardened, but he wasn't careful enough, and he's not powerful anymore. Webb stood for the defense opening. His smile was practiced, professional. Ladies and gentlemen, what you've just heard is a compelling story. Truly, Mr. Garrett should write novels, but a story is all it is. 6 tragic accidents, 6 terrible losses, and one man, my client, who tried to help the families left behind by acquiring their properties, paying their debts, giving them closure. Murmurs in the courtroom. Someone in the back made a sound of disgust. The prosecution wants you to believe that Cornelius Whitmore, a respected banker, a community leader, a man who built this town's economy, is some kind of monster. But where's the proof? Brake cables, any mechanic will tell you cables fray and break all the time. A letter. Written by a man who had a financial dispute with my client. A child's testimony. From an 8-year-old girl who's been coached by adults who want my client's money. Silas's hands curled into fists. Pearl grabbed his arm. Not yet, she whispered. Let them dig their own grave. Webb continued. My client is innocent. The evidence is circumstantial, and when you've heard all the testimony, when you've seen all the facts, you'll have no choice but to acquit. He sat down, satisfied. Judge Hawthorne looked at the prosecutor. Mr. Garrett, call your first witness. The prosecution calls Dr. Josiah Crane. Doc Crane walked to the stand slowly. He was thinner than he'd been 3 weeks ago. The consumption was winning. Dr. Crane, how long have you practiced medicine in Bitter Creek? 32 years. And in that time, how many wagon accident victims have you examined? Dozens, maybe more. Can you describe the typical injuries you see in such accidents? Broken bones, head trauma, internal bleeding. It depends on the speed, the terrain, the angle of impact. Garrett picked up one of the brake cables. Dr. Crane, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit A. Can you tell me what this is? A brake cable, cut clean on both ends. Cut. Not frayed. Not worn. No. Cut, with a blade. You can see the marks here, he pointed. And here. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. Webb stood. Objection. The witness is not a metallurgist. I've seen enough cut metal in my life to know the difference. Doc's voice was sharp. Knife wounds, surgical cuts, industrial accidents. Metal that's been cut looks different than metal that's been stressed. This was cut. Dr. Crane. Garrett set down the cable. Did you treat Thomas Whitmore after his accident? I examined his body. He was already dead when they brought him in. What did you observe? Massive trauma, consistent with a high-speed wagon crash. But there was something else. Doc's voice dropped. His hands were cut, deep lacerations on both palms, like he'd been trying to grab something, trying to stop something. What do you think he was trying to grab? The brake lever. He was trying to slow down, but there was nothing to slow. The cable had been cut. He knew he was going to die, and he spent his last moments trying to save himself. The courtroom was silent. One more question, Dr. Crane. Did you ever treat Emma Grace Whitmore? Yes, twice. For what injuries? Cracked ribs, bruises, burns. And what was the explanation given? She fell, both times. Doc's eyes found Cornelius, held. But she didn't fall. Children who fall don't have belt buckle marks on their backs. They don't have cigar-shaped burns on their arms. Someone hurt that child. Someone hurt her over and over. And I said nothing, because I was afraid. His voice broke. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm dying. Got maybe a month left, and I won't spend it protecting a murderer. Webb stood. Dr. Crane, isn't it true that you have a personal grudge against my client? I have a grudge against anyone who hurts children. But specifically my client. Didn't he refuse to extend credit to your practice 2 years ago? He did, and I paid off my debts by selling my house. That doesn't change what I saw. That doesn't change what he did. No further questions. Doc Crane stepped down. He passed the defense table on his way back to his seat. Stopped. Looked at Cornelius. I delivered that girl. Held her the day she was born. Watched her father cry with joy. His voice was quiet, deadly. You took everything from her, and now you're going to answer for it. Dr. Crane. Judge Hawthorne's voice was firm. Return to your seat. Doc nodded, walked away. But the damage was done. The jury was watching Cornelius now, really watching. And what they saw wasn't a respected banker. It was a man who couldn't meet their eyes. The prosecution called Pearl Chin next. She walked to the stand with her back straight and her head high. The same way she'd walked when she bought her freedom. The same way she'd walked every day since. Miss Chin, what is your occupation? I'm a seamstress. I own a shop in Bitter Creek. And how long have you lived in the territory? 21 years. I came here as an indentured servant. Worked 6 years to buy my freedom. During your time in Bitter Creek, did you have occasion to meet Emma Grace Whitmore? Yes, she came to my shop 4 times after her father died, each time to buy thread for mending. Did you notice anything unusual during these visits? Pearl pushed up her sleeve, showed the brand mark on her wrist. I was 14 when a man burned me with a branding iron. For spilling tea. I know what cruelty looks like. I've worn it on my skin for 20 years. She rolled down her sleeve. The last time Emmy came to my shop, her sleeve pulled up when she reached for the high shelf. I saw marks, belt buckle patterns, cigar burns. The same kind of marks I've seen on 100 women who said they fell down stairs or walked into doors. What did you do? I asked her what happened. She said she fell. Pearl's voice hardened. She was 8 years old, and she'd already learned to lie to protect the man who was hurting her, because that's what children do. They protect their abusers because they think they have to, because they think no one will believe them, because they think they deserve it. Did you report what you saw? No, not then. I told myself it wasn't my business. Told myself I didn't have proof. Told myself a Chinese seamstress's word against a white banker meant nothing. She looked at the jury. I was a coward, and because of my cowardice, that child suffered for months longer than she should have. What changed? Silas McAllister found her half dead in a blizzard, took her in, refused to give her back. Pearl's voice softened. He didn't care about the law. He didn't care about Cornelius Whitmore's power. He just cared about a child who needed help. And that made me brave enough to care too. Webb cross-examined. Miss Chin, isn't it true that you have a financial arrangement with Mr. McAllister? He invested in my business. $500. I've paid it back with interest. So you owe him. I owe him nothing. Our accounts are settled. What I'm doing here today isn't about money. It's about truth. But you've never actually seen Mr. Whitmore strike the child, have you? I've seen the marks his hands left behind. That's enough. No further questions. Pearl stepped down, walked past Silas on her way to her seat. You're doing good, she whispered. She's doing good. But the hardest part was still coming. The prosecution calls Emma Grace Whitmore. The courtroom went silent. Emmy stood. Her legs were shaking. Silas could see it in the way she moved, careful, controlled, trying not to let anyone see how scared she was. He caught her hand as she passed. I'm right here. She nodded, kept walking. The witness stand seemed huge. She had to climb up to reach the chair. Her feet didn't touch the floor. Emma, Garrett's voice was gentle. Can you tell me how old you are? 8. And where do you live now? With Papa Silas, at Rimrock Ranch. Do you know why we're here today? Yes. Her voice was small but steady. To tell the truth about Uncle Cornelius. That's right. I'm going to ask you some questions. All you have to do is tell the truth. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Good. Garrett stepped back, gave her space. Emmy, when did you go to live with your uncle? After Papa died, last June. And what was it like living with him? Emmy was quiet for a moment. Her hands gripped the arms of the chair. At first it was okay. He said I had to be good, said Papa left debts, said I had to earn my keep. Her voice dropped. But I was never good enough. No matter what I did, he always found something wrong. What happened when you weren't good enough? He hit me, with his belt, the buckle part. She touched her back unconsciously. And when I cried, he burned me with his cigar, said crying was weakness, said Papa raised me soft. Gasps from the gallery. A woman in the third row started crying. Emmy, did you ever tell anyone what was happening? I tried, once. I told the school teacher, Mrs. Patterson. She said I must be mistaken. Said Mr. Whitmore was a respectable man. Said I should be grateful he took me in. How did that make you feel? Like nobody would ever believe me. Like I was alone. Garrett nodded slowly. Emmy, I need to ask you about something difficult. The night before your father died. Do you remember that night? Yes. Can you tell me what you heard? Emmy's hands tightened on the chair. She looked at Silas. He nodded, encouraging. I was supposed to be asleep, but I heard voices. Papa and Uncle Cornelius in the kitchen. They were fighting. What were they fighting about? The land. Uncle wanted to buy it. Papa said no. Uncle said Papa should think about what happened to people who told him no. Papa said he knew. Said he'd found proof. Proof of what? That Uncle killed people. For their land. Papa found letters in the old family trunk. Letters Uncle thought were burned. Papa said he was going to the sheriff. He said Uncle would pay for what he'd done. The courtroom was dead silent. What did your uncle say? He laughed. Said the sheriff worked for him. Said the judge worked for him. Said everybody worked for him. Emmy's voice cracked. And then he said accidents happen on mountain roads. Said brake cables where. Said a man with a young daughter should think about what might happen if he wasn't around to protect her. Did your father respond? He said he wasn't afraid. Said the truth would come out eventually. Said someone would find the evidence and make things right. Emmy's eyes filled with tears. He was talking about Papa Silas. He just didn't say his name. How do you know? Because after Uncle left, Papa came to my room. He sat on my bed and he held my hand. And he said if anything ever happened to him, I should go to the big ranch east of town. He said there was a man there who was family even if he didn't know it yet. He said that man would protect me. She looked at Silas, tears streaming down her face. He was right. The courtroom erupted. People talking, crying, shouting. Judge Hawthorne banged his gavel. Order, order in this court. The noise subsided, slowly. Garrett approached the bench. Your Honor, I have one more question for the witness. Proceed. He turned back to Emmy. After your father died, did your uncle ever show you anything? Anything that frightened you? Yes. Her voice was barely audible. He showed me the brake cable, from Papa's wagon. He kept it in his safe. Said it was my inheritance. Said it was a reminder of what happens to people who don't cooperate. And did he say anything else? He said if I ever told anyone about the cable about what I heard that night, I'd have an accident too. Just like Papa. Just like Mama. Your mother died in a fire. Yes. Did your uncle ever say anything about that fire? Emmy was shaking now, her whole body trembling. He said fires were easy. Said nobody asked questions about fires. Said if I wasn't careful I'd burn up just like she did. Webb shot to his feet. Objection. The witness is clearly traumatized and unreliable. The witness is telling the truth, Garrett countered. Something the defense seems allergic to. Enough. Hawthorne's voice cut through the argument. The objection is overruled. The witness will continue. But Emmy didn't continue. She was crying too hard. Silent, shaking sobs that racked her small body. Silas couldn't stand it anymore. He stood, walked to the witness stand, picked her up, and held her against his chest. Order! Hawthorne banged his gavel. Mr. McAllister, you cannot... She's 8 years old. Silas's voice was rough, broken. She just told a room full of strangers that the man who raised her threatened to burn her alive. She's done enough. The courtroom was silent. Hawthorne looked at Emmy shaking in Silas's arms. At Cornelia stone-faced at the defense table. At the jury, 12 men and women with tears in their eyes. The witness is excused. His voice was quiet. Mr. Garrett, do you have any additional witnesses? One more, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Miss Agnes Abernathy. Silas carried Emmy back to her seat. Consuelo wrapped her arms around the child, murmuring in Spanish. Pearl handed her a handkerchief. Abernathy took the stand. She looked smaller than she had 3 weeks ago, older. Miss Abernathy, you were Cornelius Whitmore's secretary for 12 years, is that correct? Yes. During that time, did you witness any illegal activity? I witnessed everything. Her voice was flat, resigned. I typed the forged documents. I filed the false claims. I watched him destroy families and steal their land. She looked at the jury. And I said nothing. For 12 years I said nothing. Why not? Because I was afraid, because he paid me well, because I told myself it wasn't my business. She shook her head. I had 100 excuses. None of them matter now. Miss Abernathy, did you keep any records of Mr. Whitmore's activities? I kept copies of everything. Letters, ledgers, bank transfers. Anything that might prove what he was doing. She pulled a thick folder from her bag. It's all here. Names, dates, amounts. Every crime he committed for 12 years. Garrett took the folder, handed it to the judge. Your Honor, the prosecution moves to enter this evidence into the record. Webb stood. Objection. This evidence was illegally obtained. I was his secretary. I had legal access to all of these documents. There's nothing illegal about making copies. The objection is overruled. Hawthorne opened the folder, scanned the pages. His face went pale. Mr. Garrett, have you reviewed this material? I have, Your Honor. And you're prepared to authenticate it? Every page, every signature, every transaction. Hawthorne looked at Cornelius. Something in his eyes had changed. The evidence is admitted. Webb tried to recover. Cross-examined Abernathy for an hour. Tried to paint her as a disgruntled employee. A liar. A woman scorned. She didn't waver. I'm not proud of what I did, she said over and over. I'm not proud of the person I was. But I'm done lying, and nothing you say will change what's in those files. The prosecution rested at 4 o'clock. The defense called 3 character witnesses, business associates of Cornelius, men who owed him money. None of them could look the jury in the eye. At 6 o'clock, Judge Hawthorne called for closing arguments. Webb went first. He talked for 45 minutes about reasonable doubt, about circumstantial evidence, about the unreliability of witnesses with personal grudges. The jury didn't move, didn't blink. They'd already made up their minds. Garrett's closing was shorter, 10 minutes. 6 people are dead. An 8-year-old girl has been beaten and burned and threatened with murder, and the man responsible is sitting right there. He pointed at Cornelius. You've seen the evidence. You've heard the testimony. You know what he did. He walked to the jury box, looked at each of them in turn. Justice delayed is justice denied. These families have waited years, decades. They've watched their loved one's killer walk free. They've watched him profit from their pain. His voice dropped. Don't make them wait anymore. Give them justice. Give them peace. Give them closure. He returned to his seat. Judge Hawthorne turned to the jury. You've heard the evidence. You've heard the arguments. It's time to deliberate. The jury filed out. The courtroom waited. Silas held Emmy's hand. Pearl sat beside them. Consuelo prayed. 30 minutes passed. An hour. Then the door opened. The jury returned. Have you reached a verdict? The foreman stood. A farmer from outside town. Weathered face. Honest eyes. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of murder in the first degree, how do you find guilty? Emmy squeezed Silas's hand. On all 6 counts. Guilty on all counts. On the charge of fraud. Guilty. On the charge of embezzlement. Guilty. On the charge of child endangerment. Guilty. The courtroom erupted. Cheering, crying people, embracing strangers. Cornelius sat motionless at the defense table. His face was gray. His hands were shaking. Judge Hawthorne banged his gavel. Once, twice, 3 times. Order, I will have order. The noise subsided. Hawthorne looked at Cornelius. His voice was ice. Cornelius Whitmore, you have been found guilty on all charges. Sentencing will take place tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Until then, you will remain in custody. He banged the gavel one final time. Court is adjourned. The marshals moved forward, grabbed Cornelius's arms, hauled him to his feet. He looked at Silas as they led him past. His eyes were empty. You think you've won? Silas didn't answer. You've won nothing. That girl will always remember. She'll always be afraid. She'll always be broken. Emmy stepped forward. Her voice was clear. I'm not broken. You tried to break me, and you failed. She stood tall, 8 years old, fierce. Papa was right about you. He said men like you always fall eventually. He said the truth always comes out. Cornelius stared at her. Something shifted in his face. Fear, maybe, or recognition. Your father was a fool. My father was brave, and so am I. The marshals pulled him away, out of the courtroom, out of sight. But Emmy's words hung in the air. Brave. She was brave, and she was free. The sentencing came at 9 o'clock the next morning. Judge Hawthorne didn't waste words. Cornelius Whitmore, you have been found guilty of 6 counts of murder in the first degree, 12 counts of fraud, 8 counts of embezzlement, 1 count of child endangerment. He paused. Let the weight settle. For the murders, the law is clear. You will be hanged by the neck until dead. Execution is set for April 15th. May God have mercy on your soul because this court has none. The gavel came down. Final. Cornelius said nothing. His face was empty, hollow, like something had been carved out of him during the night. The marshals led him away in chains. He didn't look back. Emmy watched from the gallery. Her hand was in Silas's, tight, trembling. Is it over? It's over. Really over. Really over. She let out a breath, long and slow, like she'd been holding it for months. I thought it would feel different. Different how? I don't know. Bigger? Happier? She looked up at him. I just feel tired. Silas understood. He'd felt the same way after the jury verdict, after Cornelius was led away, after everything he'd fought for finally came true. Victory didn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it just felt like the end of a long, hard road. Let's go home. They walked out of the courthouse together. The crowd parted to let them through. People nodded, tipped hats. Some reached out to touch Emmy's shoulder to offer silent support. Pearl was waiting by the wagon, Consuelo beside her. It's done, Pearl asked. It's done. Good. She climbed up onto the seat. Then let's get out of this town. I've seen enough courthouses to last a lifetime. The ride back to Bitter Creek took 4 hours. Emmy slept most of the way, her head on Silas's shoulder, her breathing soft and even. Consuelo drove. Pearl sat beside her. What happens now? Pearl asked quietly. We rebuild. The barn. The homestead. Everything Cornelius burned or stole. Silas looked at Emmy sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. We give her a life worth living. And you? What about me? Pearl smiled. You've spent 3 years trying to die, Silas McAllister. Now you've got a reason to live. That's going to take some getting used to. He didn't argue. She was right. 3 years of grief, 3 years of silence, 3 years of waiting for death to come and take him the way it had taken Sarah and Thomas. Now he had Emmy. Now he had a reason. It was going to take some getting used to. They reached Rimrock Ranch at sunset. Miguel was waiting on the porch. His face broke into a grin when he saw them. Boss, we heard. The whole territory heard. News travels fast. Justice travels faster. Miguel helped Emmy down from the wagon. She was still half asleep, rubbing her eyes. The boys want to celebrate. Broke out the good whiskey. Maybe later. There's something else. Miguel's face grew serious. Visitors. Been waiting all day. Silas tensed. What kind of visitors? The good kind. Come see. They walked inside. The sitting room was full of people. Jenkins and his wife. The widow Henderson. The school teacher. Doc Crane looking worse than ever but still standing. Reverend Hicks. And 6 people Silas didn't recognize. Mr. McAllister? A woman stepped forward. Middle-aged, tired eyes, but something fierce in them. My name is Mary Morrison. Henry Morrison was my husband. The first victim. The first cable. These are the families, Jenkins explained. The other families. They came when they heard about the trial. Wanted to thank you in person. Silas looked at them. 6 strangers bound by grief, by loss, by a decade of unanswered questions. I didn't do this for thanks. We know. Mary Morrison's voice cracked. But we've been waiting 10 years. 10 years of wondering. 10 years of being told we were imagining things, that accidents happen, that we should move on. She wiped her eyes. You gave us the truth. You gave us justice. That deserves thanks whether you want it or not. A man stepped forward. Japanese, weathered hands, eyes that had seen too much. My name is Kenji Tanaka. William Tanaka was my brother. He came to this country with nothing, built a farm with his bare hands, and Cornelius Whitmore took it from him. His voice broke. I thought I'd die without knowing who killed him. Now I know. Now I can tell his spirit that justice came. One by one they spoke. Samuel Reed's son, grown now, who'd spent 15 years in an orphanage wondering why his parents had to die. Elizabeth Crowfeather's sister, who'd traveled 200 miles to see the man who'd murdered her family. James O'Brien's widow, who'd remarried but never stopped grieving. And Thomas Whitmore's daughter, who'd survived everything Cornelius tried to do to her. Emmy stepped forward when they were done. Her voice was small but steady. My papa used to say that bad things happen to good people. He said the world isn't fair and pretending it is just makes things worse. She looked at the faces around her. But he also said that good people find each other. They stick together. They make things better even when it's hard. She took Silas's hand. Papa Silas found me. You found each other. Maybe the world isn't fair. But maybe that's why we have to be. Mary Morrison knelt down in front of her, took her hands. Your papa was a wise man. He was the best man I ever knew. Emmy's eyes filled. Except for Papa Silas. The room went quiet. Silas couldn't speak. His throat was too tight. Pearl broke the silence. I think this calls for that whiskey Miguel mentioned. Everyone laughed. The tension broke. People started talking, embracing, sharing stories they'd kept locked away for years. Silas slipped out onto the porch. He needed air, needed space. The sun was setting, orange and pink and gold. He thought about Thomas, about the letter in the well, about 15 years of silence that could have been 15 years of brotherhood. Blood doesn't make family, choice does. But sometimes you get both. He'd gotten both. Too late to save his brother, but not too late to save his brother's daughter. Papa Silas. Emmy appeared beside him. She'd followed him out. You should be inside, celebrating. So should you. He smiled. I'm not much for celebrating. I know, but I wanted to tell you something. She slipped her hand into his. Papa used to say that stars remember everyone who's good. That when good people die, they become stars, and they watch over the people they love. She pointed up at the sky. The first stars were appearing. I think Papa's up there. And your wife. And your son. I think they're watching us right now. Silas looked up. His eyes burned. I think so too. Do you think they're happy that we found each other? He squeezed her hand. I think they're very happy. They stood there together watching the stars come out, and for the first time in 3 years, Silas McAllister felt something like peace. Spring came early that year. The snow melted in March. The creeks ran high. The valley turned from white to brown to green so fast it felt like watching something be born. And Silas kept his promises. The barn went up first, bigger than the one Cornelius had burned. Room for 40 horses instead of 20. Miguel and the ranch hands worked 14-hour days, and by April it was finished. Emmy helped. She carried nails. She held boards. She learned how to swing a hammer without hitting her thumb. Not bad, Miguel said, watching her drive a nail straight and true. You've got good hands. Papa Silas taught me. He taught you well. The cattle came next. 300 head from the spring sales, plus 50 more from a rancher who owed Silas a favor. By May, the herd was back to full strength. Emmy learned to ride that month. Really ride, not just sit on a horse while someone led it around. Silas put her on the gentlest mare in the stable and showed her how to hold the reins, how to use her knees, how to communicate with the animal without words. She's listening to me, Emmy said, wonder in her voice. Animals always listen. It's people who forget how to talk. Will you teach me to rope? When you're ready. When will I be ready? When I say so. She made a face. He laughed. It was the first time she'd heard him really laugh deep and full, and something in her eyes lit up. You should do that more. Do what? Laugh. You look younger when you laugh. I'm 54. Nothing's going to make me look younger. Laughing might. He laughed again. She grinned, and that was how it went, day by day, week by week, learning to be a family instead of two broken people sharing a roof. The homestead came last. They started rebuilding in June. The whole town turned out. 50 people with tools and lumber and determination. You don't have to do this, Silas told Jenkins. Yes, we do. Jenkins handed him a hammer. We stood by while Cornelius destroyed this place. Least we can do is help put it back together. The foundation went in first, then the walls, then the roof. By July, it was starting to look like a house again. Emmy watched from the edge of the property. Her face was complicated. You okay? Silas asked. I lived here, before, with Mama and Papa. She pointed to the corner of the foundation. My room was there. I could see the apple trees from my window. You remember that? I remember everything. Her voice dropped. I remember the night of the fire, too. The night Mama died. Silas went still. She never talked about the fire before. Uncle Cornelius was there, before it started. I saw him through my window. He was carrying something, a can. She looked at Silas. I didn't understand then. I was only 5, but I understand now. He set the fire. I think so. I think he killed Mama the way he killed Papa. Made it look like an accident. Her eyes were dry. She'd cried all the tears she had. I think he's been planning this for years, since before I was born. Silas didn't know what to say. What could you say to an 8-year-old who'd figured out that her entire life had been shaped by a murderer's ambition? I'm sorry. It's not your fault. I know, but I'm still sorry. Emmy looked at the half-built house, at the workers moving around it, at the future taking shape in front of her. Can we plant apple trees like the ones that used to be here? We can plant whatever you want. I want apple trees, 15 of them. One for every year Papa didn't know you. Silas's throat closed up. 15 trees. We'll plant them in September. And wildflowers, the kind your wife liked. How do you know about those? Consuelo told me. She said your wife used to press them in books. Said she saw one fall out of the ledger once. Emmy looked up at him. Can we plant them too, for her? And for Papa? He couldn't speak. Just nodded. Emmy took his hand. We're going to be okay, Papa Silas, aren't we? Yeah, sweetheart, we are. The house was finished in August. 2 stories, 4 bedrooms, a porch that wrapped around 3 sides. Emmy stood in front of it with Silas and Consuelo and Miguel and Pearl and everyone else who'd helped build it. It's beautiful, she said. It's yours, Silas replied. All of it. The house, the land, everything your papa left you. But I'm only 8. Then I'll take care of it until you're grown. But it's yours, your inheritance, what your papa wanted you to have. Emmy was quiet for a long moment. I want to live here someday, when I'm older, but not yet. She looked at Silas. I want to stay at Rimrock Ranch, with you. Is that okay? That's more than okay. Forever. Forever. They planted the apple trees in September, 15 saplings in neat rows. Emmy dug the first hole herself, her hands blistered but determined. This one's for 1869, she said, the year you and Papa should have met. She planted 1 tree for every year of silence, every year of pride, every year they could have been brothers but weren't. When she reached the last tree, 1883, the year Thomas died, she stopped. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. But I want to. I want him to know. She looked at the sky. Papa, I'm okay. I found Papa Silas just like you said. He's taking care of me. He's teaching me about cattle and horses and numbers. And he planted these trees for you, because he's sorry he never got to say goodbye. She pushed dirt around the roots, patted it down. I love you, Papa. I'll always love you. But I love Papa Silas too, and I think you'd be happy about that." She stood up, wiped her hands on her dress. "Is that okay? What I said?" Silas couldn't answer. Tears were running down his face. "Papa Silas, are you crying?" "Yeah." "Is that bad?" "No." He pulled her into a hug. "It's not bad at all." They stood there in the orchard surrounded by saplings that would grow into trees that would bear fruit that would live long after both of them were gone. And for the first time in 15 years, Silas didn't feel alone. The wildflowers came next. Seeds scattered across the hillside where Sarah and Thomas Jr. were buried. Purple and yellow and white mixed together the way Sarah had always liked them. She would have loved Emmy, Silas told the gravestones. She would have loved watching her grow up. She would have been a good mother. He came out here every Sunday now, sometimes alone, sometimes with Emmy. They'd sit by the graves and talk about the week, about the ranch, about nothing in particular. It helped, having someone to talk to, even if they couldn't talk back. Papa Silas. Emmy appeared beside him. She'd started calling him that the night of the trial and hadn't stopped since. "What is it?" "Doc Crane died." Silas closed his eyes. He'd been expecting it. The consumption had been winning for months. "When?" "This morning. Consuelo just got word." He stood, brushed off his knees. "I should go to town, pay my respects. Can I come?" "If you want." "I want." They rode to Bitter Creek together. The town was quieter than it had been 6 months ago. The trial had changed things. People who'd looked the other way for years were starting to look directly at each other. It was uncomfortable, but it was honest. Doc Crane's house was full of people. Patients he'd treated, lives he'd saved, old men and young women and children who owed their existence to his steady hands and tired eyes. "He wanted to see you before he went," Doc's wife told Silas. "But there wasn't time. I'm sorry I wasn't here. You were doing what he would have wanted, taking care of that child." She looked at Emmy. "He talked about you. Said you were the bravest person he'd ever met." "I'm not brave." "Yes, you are." She took Emmy's hand. "Brave isn't not being scared. Brave is being scared and doing things anyway. That's what Dr. Crane always said." Emmy's eyes went wide. "That's what Papa Silas says too." Then they were both right. The funeral was 3 days later. Half the territory came. People who'd been saved by Doc Crane's medicine and people who'd been saved by his testimony. Silas stood at the graveside with Emmy and Consuelo and Pearl and everyone else who'd become family over the past 6 months. "He was a good man," Reverend Hicks said. "Flawed like all of us. Afraid like all of us. But in the end, he chose courage. He chose truth. He chose to speak when silence would have been easier." He looked at Silas. "We should all be so brave when our time comes." After the funeral, Pearl found him. "I'm leaving." "What?" "Not forever, just for a while. There's a ship to San Francisco next week. I've got family there I haven't seen in 15 years. She smiled. "Seems like a good time to fix that." "Will you come back?" "Of course. I've got a business here, and friends." She looked at Emmy. "And a goddaughter who needs someone to teach her how to sew." "Goddaughter, if you'll allow it." Silas looked at Emmy. She was grinning. "I think she's already decided." Pearl hugged them both. "I'll be back by Christmas. Save me some of that apple cider everyone's been talking about." She left the next week. The town felt emptier without her, but not empty. Because that was the thing about family. It grew. It changed. It adapted. 3 years ago, Silas had been alone, a ghost haunting his own house. Now he had Emmy, and Consuelo, and Miguel, and Jenkins and his wife, and the widow Henderson, and a whole town that had learned to choose courage over silence. It wasn't the family he'd expected, but it was the family he'd chosen, and that made it better. 2 years passed. Emmy turned 10, then 11. She grew 3 inches and learned to ride like she was born in the saddle. Silas taught her everything he knew about cattle, about horses, about reading the land and the weather and the subtle signs that told you a storm was coming. She taught him things too. How to laugh again, how to look forward instead of backward, how to love without being afraid of losing. Papa Silas. Yeah. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't come to your gate that night? They were sitting on the porch watching the sunset. It was their ritual now end of every day, sitting together talking about nothing and everything. Sometimes. What do you think would have happened? He was quiet for a long moment. I think I would have kept waiting. For something to end the waiting. I wasn't living, Emmy. I was just existing. Marking time until I could join Sarah and Thomas. That's sad. It was, but it's not anymore. He looked at her, 10 years old now, strong, healthy, brave. You saved me, Emmy, just as much as I saved you. We saved each other. Yeah, we did. The apple trees were tall enough to bear fruit now. Small red apples, tart and sweet, that Emmy picked every fall and brought to town to share. These are from my papa's orchard, she'd tell people. He planted them for me before he died. It wasn't exactly true, but it wasn't exactly false either. The trees grew from the ground. Thomas had loved the land he'd worked, the dream he'd had of passing something on to his daughter. In a way, he had planted them, through Silas, through Emmy, through everyone who'd helped rebuild what Cornelius had destroyed. The wildflowers came back every spring, purple and yellow and white, covering the hillside where Sarah and Thomas Jr. rested. Emmy added more seeds every year. For Doc Crane, for her mother, for everyone they'd lost, and everyone they remembered. The hill is getting crowded, she told Silas one spring. Is that bad? No, I like it. It means we haven't forgotten. She was right. They hadn't forgotten. They never would. But they'd learned to remember without drowning, to grieve without giving up, to carry the past without letting it crush the present. That was the hardest lesson, and the most important one. Cornelius was executed on schedule. April 15th. They didn't attend. Do you want to see it? Silas had asked. No. Emmy's voice was firm. He's taken enough of my life. I won't give him my time too. So they stayed home that day, planted vegetables in the garden, read books by the fire, lived their lives while a murderer died 200 miles away. Is it wrong that I don't feel anything? Emmy asked that night. No, you've already grieved, you've already healed. He doesn't deserve any more of your tears. I thought I'd be happy when he died, or sad, or something. What do you feel? She thought about it. Free. And that was enough. That was more than enough. 5 years after the trial, Emmy was 13. She ran the ranch books now, keeping track of every penny, every head of cattle, every transaction. She's got a head for numbers, Jenkins told Silas. Better than most bankers I know. Don't let her hear you say that. She's already got enough confidence. But he was proud. Prouder than he'd ever been of anything. The homestead was fully restored. Emmy spent weekends there, sometimes tending the orchard, cleaning the house, sitting on the porch where her parents used to sit. I'm going to live here someday, she told Silas. When I'm grown, I'm going to run my own ranch right next to yours. What about getting married, having children? Maybe, if I find someone worth marrying, she grinned. But they'll have to pass your approval first. Damn right they will, she laughed. He laughed. The sound of it echoed across the valley. This was what healing looked like. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of joy. Not forgetting the past, but choosing the future. Not living alone, but building a family from the broken pieces of two lives that had found each other in a blizzard. On Emmy's 14th birthday, Silas gave her a present. A pocket watch. Gold case. her father's initials engraved on the front. "Where did you find this?" "In Cornelius's safe, with everything else he stole. I've been keeping it for you, until you were ready." She opened it. Inside the cover, words were engraved. "To Thomas on our wedding day. Time passes, but love remains. Sarah." "Mama gave this to Papa." "She did. And now it's mine. It's always been yours. I was just holding it for you." Emmy closed the watch, pressed it against her heart. "Thank you, Papa Silas." "Happy birthday, sweetheart." They hugged, fierce and long, the way family hugs. "Papa Silas." "Yeah, I want you to know something." "What?" She pulled back, looked at him with eyes that had seen too much and survived it all. "I used to think family was the people you were born to, the people who shared your blood. But that's not true, is it?" "No, it's not. Family is the people who choose you, who fight for you, who stay when everyone else leaves." She took his hand. "You chose me, Papa Silas. You fought for me. You stayed." "I always will." "I know." She smiled, the smile that had taken years to rebuild. "That's what makes you my father." She walked away, toward the house, toward Consuelo, who had a cake waiting, toward the life they'd built together from nothing but courage and choice. Silas stood on the porch watching her go and thought about everything that had led to this moment. A blizzard, a collapsed child, a promise made in desperation, a brother he'd never known, a niece he'd almost lost, a town that had learned to choose courage over silence, and a family, his family, built from broken pieces and healed by love. The sun set behind the mountains, gold and orange and pink. He thought about Sarah, about Thomas Jr., about the life he'd lost and the life he'd found. He thought about Thomas, his brother, about the letter in the well, about 15 years of silence that had ended in the best possible way. Blood doesn't make family, choice does. But sometimes you get both. He'd gotten both, and he'd never take it for granted. From inside the house, Emmy's voice called out, "Papa Silas, the cake's ready." He smiled, turned toward the door, and walked into the warmth where his daughter was waiting. The snow came again that December. 6 years after the night Emmy had collapsed at his gate. Silas sat on the porch watching it fall. Soft white flakes covering the valley, turning the world clean and new. Emmy sat beside him, 14 years old now, almost a woman. "Remember the night we met?" she asked. "Every day. I was so scared. I thought I was going to die." "So did I. But you saved me. We saved each other." She leaned against his shoulder, the way she had 1,000 times before. "Papa Silas." "Yeah, thank you." "For what?" "For saying yes, when I asked to stay one night." She looked at him. "For making it forever." He put his arm around her, held her close. "Forever's not long enough. Then we'll make it longer." They sat there together watching the snow fall, watching the world turn white and silent and new. And Silas McAllister, who had spent 3 years waiting to die, finally understood what it meant to live. Not for himself, not for the past, not for the grief he'd been carrying, but for the child who'd stumbled out of a blizzard and into his life, for the family they'd built from nothing, for the future they'd chosen together. That was what love meant. That was what family meant. Not the blood you were born with, the people you'd die for, and the life you'd choose every single morning, even when choosing was hard. The snow kept falling. The night grew quiet. And in a ranch house at the edge of the Wyoming Territory, a man and his daughter sat together watching the stars come out, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it the same way they'd faced everything else. Together. Because that was what family did. They chose each other, and they never let go.